All right. So, listeners, sorry about that glitch in the start, but welcome to this week interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. A very warm gather around and also invite somebody to listen with you. We really are trying to grow the audience in leaps and bounds. And so every time you invite somebody and they invite somebody, we achieve that. That is one of the ways that you can support the program this week in interview. Well, welcome to you, no matter where you're listening to us from, whether you are on on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, or you're doing TDN TV or TDN Radio. Also, we have folks in Dominica on RVR Jams Radio. You listen to us on DigiPlay Channel 59. A very warm welcome to you as well. And great news, we are also collaborating with two additional radio stations, DTM Radio, Global uh, Music, and what's the Talk, Global Talk and Music, GTM Radio. Our brother Angelo Allen carries our programming at TDN Radio Live, including this weekend interview. So, very warm welcome to you if you're tuning in through that medium. And also, Twitch TV /TDN Network is also carrying us live. So, and the usual, as I said, usual media. Give us a like, follow, your comments, and so on. I hope that you are having a wonderful week. It is Carnival week. Next week, Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. So, between today and next Wednesday, there's a whole bunch of activities going on in Dominica, in Trinidad, in Carriacou, in Cape Verde. There are a number of places that celebrate in New Orleans, celebrate carnival or some type of festivity that leads up to Ash Wednesday. So if you are part of that, I wish you loads of fun, safe fun. I hope to see you back here. It's very secure next week, Wednesday. Grenada also celebrated their Independence Day recently. So if those of you from Grenada who are tuning in, happy independence to you, Grenada, of course, and the Grenadines. So Grenada and Pitimatnik and Carriacou. That forms the country of Grenada. So happy independence to you. That's some of what we'll be discussing tonight. So many of our countries in the Caribbean uh, gained their independence from Britain, from France, from Spain, and so on, and from the Dutch. And we wonder, as they're approaching the 50th year. I think Grenada did the 50th anniversary last year. Uh, Dominica's own is about eh, 2 years away. It's 2028. But that's one of the things that will be form part of the discussion tonight, because my guest tonight is Mr. Oliver J. Serafin. He is a former prime minister of the island of Dominica. He really guided Dominica through some tumultuous times following the forced resignation of the Patrick John government, which he was part of. But I think he was the first one to relieve himself of his responsibility when that administration started facing stiff opposition from the citizens and did not seem to be functioning in the best interest of Dominicans. And so at the culmination of that, he was put in as prime minister. And shortly thereafter, we had the worst hurricane ever, the Hurricane David in 1979, August 29th, 1979. And he was the one at the helm that steered Dominica through that tremendous challenge to a very, very young nation. Remember, Dominica gained independence in November 3rd, 1978. And then we had this huge, massive hurricane that hit Dominica in August, the following August. And so uh, OJ is on with us, Mr. Seraphin is on with us. And last time he was on, there was so much that was left untouched. And there's still so much to explore Miss, OJ is the last standing member of that original cabinet that took us into independence, and so I am sure there is a treasure trove of information that he has that we have to make sure that we can capture for posterity and for young Dominicans to understand what it is that they stand on when they say that they are Dominicans. But tonight we're here, we bring him back. This is the second time, and I'm sure there'll be a third and a fourth and a fifth time, because, as I said, there's so much that we need to learn. So let's bring OJ up on stage, and give him a very warm CDN welcome to his second time, another episode of This Week in Interview. So OJ, welcome. You're not on. Let me see. I think I can put you on. Yeah, I can bring you on. There you are. Um, Welcome back. You know, I
Well,
don't know
it's a
if you're
pleasure.
celebrating Carnival, but if you are, I wish you a festive time.
Yeah, well, I'm in the United States Virgin Islands, and
Okay.
so it's a different climate here, as you will appreciate.
Hmm.
Let me say I am very grateful and happy that you were able to connect with me again for another program. In fact, I found out a little bit more about you that you were involved with many areas of Dominica's development process, which I wasn't aware of. And so I'm sure that as we go along, we'll find common ground on some of the matters that will be maybe discussed. Clearly, in my view, I believe I remain very much an enigma to many of the younger people. And so,
You
just
mean you mean they're wondering who is OJ?
absolutely, especially those under 40, I believe, having some problems to put that together.
Well, let's
But
let's 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 clarify some of that. Let's find out who is Oliver J. Serafin.
well, I grew up in the Roseau area, and due to the circumstances of lack at the time, my parents were moving from different parts of Roseau. So I was in the Virgin Lane area at one time, and then in the area close to the Fort Young, in that area Domlek is. There's
Hmm.
another little
Hmm.
lane there, up the Girls
Castle
Lane,
Street or something like that.
Castle Street, I think it
Yeah.
is.
Hmm.
Then I was in Old Street, I was in River Street, I was in New Street before I went to Shillingford Crescent by the Public Works, and then Greens Lane afterwards, which is became so we had two homes, one in Shillingford Crescent by the Public Works Department, and the other at Greens Lane. When my father and mother, through their very active efforts at reconstruction of the economics, ended up having two homes, and so I grew up to my teenage period in the Goodwill area.
Hmm.
Yeah, of course, last year, about the same time, I was given an award together with Billy Doctorov and others who were qualified, they think, to become eminent citizens of that period in that location of Goodwill. My schooling was in the grammar school. I became the captain of the Benedict Joseph House. I remember
Oh,
Dr.
you're a
Ferrer.
BJ. You're a
I was
BJ.
BJ, right?
Me as
Yes,
well.
captain of the house.
Okay.
And so I remember Dr. Ferrara went on a visit, said, "Boy, you probably have forgotten that you're trying to get me to do the long jump." And I was having some difficulties with that. Because I became the long jump champion of Dominica, and then, in fact, of the school and also in competitions, island wide and short distances. I
Sprint.
represented Dominica also in St. Lucia for short distances and so on. I was a table
Hmm.
tennis national player. And so I had my youthful days. And when after we left grammar school, there's a club called the Empire Club, which
Hmm.
is I became the president of that club. And shortly after, guess who was? Edison James became president. So two presidents of that club became prime
Prime
ministers.
ministers.
So
What's the
that's
name of
my
that club?
the Empire Club.
What tell us about that club, because it produced two prime ministers. We cannot
Yeah,
just
it
gloss
certainly
over it.
did. You had the Elwin brothers, you had Bish Latik, you had a number of eminent and prominent players, cricketers, who, what's his name, Irving Shillingford and others,
Mm.
Telford Shillingford. There are lots of persons who came from that club who were very prolific in their various areas of capacity athletically, you know. So
Mhm. Mhm.
that club was very popular. In fact, what we spoke most about was the development of the character. And so there we would have, you know, lots of what do you call debates and discussions brought in by persons who came in from the business community and the professional class who came in, taught us certain ideas for the development of our character and development of ourselves. And so I traveled throughout the Caribbean as a salesperson, and I was a student of the Dale Carnegie Institute doing mind dynamics and so on, psychology. And so I became pretty much involved with communication. And then, not shortly after that, I was involved with the business of culture. I had a club called the Green Lantern Club, and there it was that the major bands of the era played there and were in fact hosted there for practice sessions like the Swinging Stars, the Gaylord's Power Movement, Bell's Combo, etc. In fact, I was the manager of Liquid Ice and so on. So I was involved with a lot of music and entertainment. In fact, the Green Lantern Club was the most major entertainment facility of the day. Persons
Where was
remember it
that
as
located? Just
by the
for
Deepwater Harbor. Where the Deepwater Harbor is right now. That's where the Green Lantern was. And for
oh wow.
persons above 50 will probably remember that was the club of the day, you know, where
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
had quite a number of events taking place there on a regular basis. And then shortly afterwards, my partner, I went to do the airline business. In fact, I was quite surprised and elated that Dr. Honeychurch in some program, I think a week or so ago on DBS Radio, could recall that I had an airline called Dominica Airways with two DC-3s transporting people throughout the Caribbean as well as cargo. You know, it was a 30-seater, and we were young in the mid 20s, and I owned an airline. And so we had our offices in King George V Street. And it was a very successful for a time until such time as the politics beckoned to me and I gave up my shares to Air Martinique. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder if it was the right decision, you know, going to politics and leaving what was then a very positive occupation and initiating such an event of a
Why,
local.
why why did you
Yeah,
have to give up your business to go into politics?
well, because of I became Minister of Communications who was responsible
Mhm.
for aviation, and there was a conflict of interest. And his suggestion was that
That that is extremely interesting. That
yeah,
we
so
I want to
that's what
explore that a little bit more. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what transpired. But actually, and in fact, it was a great moment for us. I believe it was the Lawrence chorale and all of that. My sister
Mhm.
was in that group who traveled to St. Croix and the what is it, Gramax had their first trip to Guadeloupe, you know, through my kind donation of a very liberal level of charging and give them a free ticket to return for the purpose of immigration. They met with the promoters in Martinique and they became who they became. And so it was interesting for me that that happened. There were other, I think Gordon Henderson made some mention of some other personality or the other in the business who recognized and remembered me as having given him a trip to Martinique as well, where he landed and became part of Exile One. So I have been involved with that kind of occupation in the area of culture. I brought in the Tabu Combo from Haiti the first time around. I did bring in Big Youth into the Bala Park in Grand Bay,
Mhm.
and there was their first encounter with our people in Dominica. The excitement was there, and you know I was involved with quite a number of other bands from St. Lucia and other places, bringing them into Dominica. And so, you know, my life has been one of mixed situations. I became an exporter of agricultural produce. I had my own boat carrying agricultural produce, particularly to the U.S. Virgin Islands. As I'm talking about the before I went into politics. So, and you know, and then I became a minister of government, became prime minister, and then shortly
Big
afterwards,
project, OJ.
yeah, I did
Just,
other
just
things.
a little fun fact, just a little
Yeah,
fun thing. When you brought Tabu Combo, they played in Rainbow City in Pottersville, no?
absolutely so, correct.
I
Absolutely
remember
correct.
that show. I
Yeah,
was a little boy in grammar school,
yeah.
but
Okay, good.
I remember
Right,
going to that show and I see Tabuko. I can still see them. They were dressed in white,
right, right,
performing
right,
shows like
right.
New York City, New York City, New York. I,
Right, 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 right.
yeah,
They were
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The other persons in Granby would remember when Big Youth came to
And
Granby,
Big Youth came, right?
yeah, from Jamaica. And so, I that was my days of fun and enjoyment of Dominica. So for me, like at this period of time in the Carnival City moment where we are about to enter into the Carnival Monday, Tuesday, those are times when I made the most money, in my club. So, for me, I had those moments of joy of ensuring that, my club, met the requirements of the clientele. And it was a good thing in those days. And then after that, when I came into the political arena, I also, found my way into several things in government, which obviously this program is not enough to talk about. But certainly, having brought all of that to your attention, after leaving government, I went back into the trade business and I was exporting huge amounts of agricultural produce. I had a boat called the Big Din. I was carrying a whole load of agricultural produce to the U.S. Virgin Islands and St. Martin and the BVI. And I was also involved with the export of craft from throughout Dominica. Every village in the country of Dominica happened to have had some special product that they would produce, starting from Pottersville with the bookshop for the blind, or if you go to Loda with the miniature boats they did in in Trafalgar, you had the weaving of chairs and all of that. In Penfield, you'd have the different types of basketry and all that sort of thing. What we call the Carib territory in those days. We were the biggest exporter. We, in fact, my wife and I traveled to all kinds of places, to Berlin, to Paris, to Deauville, to France, to different parts of France. And, we carried the produce, the craft of the indigenous people to the trade shows in St. Croix and St. Thomas and um, BVI and all of that, and also in Florida where we went to a lot of those big events for trade of craft items. So I have had a life of a lot of various variety of situations that propelled me, including the export of flowers as well, floriculture. So I enjoyed my country very much, and so here I am, looking back, and there are so many things that remains unsaid and undone. And it's good that we talk so I could explore some of those things and bring back my memory before it gets dim. Thank you for the invitation.
No, it's a pleasure. I am here in awe because those are big projects. In
Yes.
2 days' time, with all the communication that we have and the ability to send an email to somebody and they come back to you. In those days, you had to send a letter, or you had to travel to go meet people, or being able to organize those type of businesses uh, just speaks to your ability as an entrepreneur. I want to so one of the members of the audience, Ama says, and I stuck a pin in there to let you continue, but to come back. It's because it struck me when you said that you gave up your business so that you could go into politics. That is, I mean, that is an endangered species in
Yeah,
this day
that
and
was a
time.
zero tolerance. That was zero tolerance against any aspect of corruption in those days. Because you will remember that the early leaders like Leblanc, Patrick John, and myself, and I'll throw in Eugenia Charles as honorable mention here as well, although I had my issues with her. But these were our days, when you thought that you went in there for the purpose of developing country,
Right,
period.
right.
And so it maybe some at the time when I left, when I left politics in 1980, or when politics left me in 1980, I lost the elections by 20 something votes. I then went into engaging in opening a bakery. You wouldn't believe that. The bakery was the old fashioned ones with the wood
Uh,
um, oven.
We're in
And so I
Roseau
had to, yeah, no, in Concord Village.
in Concord. Okay.
Yes, and we transported bread to and Trizzel and different parts of in the indigenous community, Carinago community, and
Hmm.
Bells. And my job was to go and deliver the bread to those places. And my mother, who had a shop in Fonpouli as well, would receive my bread. So we did around 6 or 8 bags a night, and it was a start off for me coming out of politics. And I remember one of my comrades um, who took over the leadership of the Labour Party had a humorous thing to say to an audience in Portsmouth, saying, "Well, si zo da gade pou oje, iya kon God ka fe pen," you know. So that was supposed to be a down, but as far as I'm concerned, it was an up. It showed that I was able
Yeah,
to go back
because
into roots.
you had business in your blood. Look at the things
That
that
way,
you
that
did.
way. By then I had a couple of children. I had to support them.
Yeah, talking about
So that was it.
you had an airline
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
operating.
yeah. Well, that was one. I had not too long after that, I had Caribbean Fisheries Limited, which was $1 million fishing boat, which was to catch long line fishing. The new boat, which I had in partnership with a company called Merit Seafoods,
Hmm.
and it was deep sea fishing. Well, that's a sad
Where would you
story.
go? Where would you go to fish in Dominican
Well,
waters
deep
or
sea fishing, we go out for about a couple of days, a day and a half
okay?
out there.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
out there still is there still. The stories are a little bit lengthy, so I'll try to short it as quickly as I can. In transporting my agricultural produce, and I had a contract with a major, what do you call it, supermarket in Tortola. And it turns out that I had a boat called the Winchester, which was not doing well. It was heating up, and we lost a lot of our produce. I lost my market. At that time, Alfie Martin and others had a company called Farm to Market, and they
Farm
had
to
a boat.
market. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the boat. There was a little issue there, and we had a little breakup in principles of how the payment should be made and so on. So eventually, I happened to have been in St. Croix with a very good friend from Bruce called um, um, Prevost, Cletus Prevost,
Hmm.
who had been employing quite a number of people on the S oil
Yeah, I
project.
know him well. His
Okay,
family. His family.
all right,
He
there we
was
go.
family to me. Yeah. Hmm.
We keep on talking every time you and I butt into an area where we have a connection. Eh?
Yeah. Cletus Prevost, his mother and my mother are sisters. So
Okay,
he and
there
I
we
are
go.
first cousins. Yeah.
There we
Yeah.
go. He's one of my best friends. And so I'd stay at his house, in Williams Delight anytime I go to St. Croix. And
Mm.
so the one night after I came from Tortola, complaining about the fact that I can't get a suitable boat, etc., he told me, "Well, let's have a good time tonight." And it was August 2nd, my birthday, and we were waiting for this long line boat coming out of doing some deep sea fishing. And whilst we were waiting, I saw this boat coming in with all those lights. It was like a Christmas lighting ceremony, and it came in. And when we docked, we were invited to have dinner with the captain. Um, and when he then acknowledged that it was his birthday, in the 2nd of August, this similar to mine, and so we called ourselves twin brothers. And then after drinking a little bit, he brought me to the bow of the ship and he says to me, "I have a secret for you." I say, "What is that?" He says, "Well, Dominica has the best potential for longline fishing. And the longline fishing boats from Merit Seafoods was coming into Dominica, and unawares to the government of the people of Dominica, they were catching, their best catch is outside Dominica for the swordfish."
Mhm.
And he says they had just confiscated a boat, I believe, in St. Vincent. And if I could get somebody in Dominica who would join me in a joint venture because I need a license to do so, to fish outside in a foreign country, I would be happy to engage that person. So on my return to St. Thomas, there was an ambulance. It's a nice story, so I'll share it. There was
Mhm.
an ambulance waiting for somebody. I met the wife grieving and so on, and she said her husband was doing a course in Montserrat, medical studies in Montserrat, and they were leaving on a boat, and he got a heart attack, and that's it for her. She got to get rid of the boat. And I asked about it, and I found out it was a long line boat, in good shape. And I called him, Chris Johnson was the gentleman's name. And when I called him,
Wow.
he says to me, Mr. Seraphin, let's start exploring this. And we got in touch with the lady in Florida and we negotiated. We got the boat from her and we put in about a $400,000 US worth of equipment on that boat. And one day I was in Dominica and here I am by the sea in port in the Deepwater Harbor there. And lo and behold, what should I see? But a similar boat with these lights flashing and coming in. And guess what? It's my boat. And boy, that
Wow.
was something else.
Wow.
That
I
was
can
to me
imagine that. I can
joy
imagine
of
that
my
feeling.
life, you know.
Yeah, I
And
can
we
imagine
fished
that
in
feeling.
Dominica for a while, bringing 3,000, 2,000 pounds of fish. And all we were seeking was a license to export some of it because it was a little bit of expense to catch that fish, and we could get $8 US a pound for it. And in Dominica, you could get $5 easy. So we
Mhm.
were saying that we do 50-50 in the government of the day and so on treated us with some disrespect. And at the end, our boat was confiscated for having fished and all of that. And then eventually it became such a situation that one night I got up very late and I decided to drive into from Concord to Rosewanne, which the boat wasn't there. Lo and behold, Mr. Johnson got tired of waiting for this government to respond, which was the Eugenia Charles government, and he took off with the boat. I never saw it again. It's not a
Wow.
nice story, a sad
No.
story.
Yeah, but I mean it shows the ups and downs of business entrepreneurship and
Right,
at the
right.
end of the day you can still smile. And I know there's a lot of people who looking at you and saying, what is this man talking about? He looks like he's not a day past 50, 60, let's say.
Yeah, God
But
is
you're
good.
yeah,
Yeah, God
so
is
so
good,
so the stress hasn't been awful on you and
Well,
all
it's
life.
not a big stress, to be honest with you. I've got a good wife, good family, etc. I
Mhm.
eat well, I sleep well, and I believe in my God, you know. I'm very prayerful. And so for him, he's the testimony that someone can live with their circumstances and not feel bitter, you know.
Right, right.
Um, I could have got bitter. I mean, more recently when my hotel was going under some very serious challenges. I remember being an agent for the first number of Haitians that was coming in with a plane. I was, I'm just trying to recall the name of the plane anyway. So this lady and her sister were guests of my hotel, and they came in to make arrangements to get a plane service out of Haiti. And I proposed to them that I'd had that experience, and they gave me the agency. And the connection was that they would bring in Haitians into Dominica, and my hotel be used as their port of entry. And that happened for a little while. Good business. They were coming in twice a week. Duncan Stowe was my attorney who would go to the airport and meet those Haitians. And then whilst I was in St. Thomas looking at a cricket match, some guys came in. I believe it was a cricket team from Dominica, then chilling from the others. And somebody told me that the police was at my place at Concord. I say, what for? He said, I don't know, but I called my agent in Dominica. And he said, yeah, the police came in, they have guns and so on. The people scattered all over the hills and whatever. And the people were terrified. And there it was that I was told that I'm not allowed to bring in more Haitians into my hotel. Yet at the same time, the the people from Haiti kept on coming. So I lost my business. That was one instance.
But they were
Not
in
too long
transit
after,
they were in transit in
in
Dominica, right?
transit, or some of them came to stay. They were escaping from, it was after Aristide, and there
Hmm.
was a revolution of some kind in
Right, right,
Dominica.
right, right.
And there
Hmm.
were good people coming in, you know, doctors, lawyers, persons who, even police officers and army people were coming in and they were looking for rescue from the situation in Haiti.
Hmm.
And some of those people stayed by me for a long time, some for a short period. But the fact that the police came to them and up to this point couldn't demonstrate anything that they did wrong because they were met by Duncan Store, the airport, they paid their fees to the government, and I understood that some fees that disappeared from the connections and so on. And you know, when all that was said and done, we were treated with such shabbiness that I just gave up on that particular trade. Not long after my hotel was demolished for the expansion of the road to the airport,
They
you know,
demolished your
the average Dominican who doesn't know, they knew of Floral Gardens, they knew it was a beautiful place.
yeah.
And suddenly it's closed. I never told anybody what happened. I keep my fight and my struggles with the system to myself. I feel that my experience with my Dominican people is that when you're in a fight, you're in a fight by yourself. And so I fought vigorously to get the benefits out of the government. And to a large extent, it was settled. To a large extent, it's not. And so that's where we are. That's the history. And life has continued to be what it is, a blessing. And yes, I was able to do what I wanted to do. And as the song of Sinatra says, I did it my way, and I
You did it
enjoyed it.
your way. However, there's still more. There is still more to do and still more to accomplish. I think this is a good
Absolutely.
place. We are the 8:34. Let's take a quick break, and then we come back. We are going to talk about contemporary, current events and current happenings, and to get your take on it, not just as someone who has held reins of leadership, political leadership, but someone who is a businessman, who also can weigh in on the temperature and the atmosphere, the business environment in Dominica that might allow somebody to thrive. So, listeners, stay with me. We'll be right back to continue my conversation with Mr. Oliver J. Serafin. Stay tuned.
Presented by.
People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
Running a radio station shouldn't be chaos. It should be simple, smart, and professional. With Joan Premium, your entire week schedule is beautifully organized and easy to manage. Real-time accuracy keeps your listeners in sync with every show. Your visitors and audience sees the right schedule every time, wherever they are. They can even choose different time zones. From analytics to social media and native app integration, Joan Premium is the professional tool your station deserves. You're never alone. We provide priority support for active license users. We're building a community. Connect with broadcasters worldwide through our Joan Community Hubs. Choose your plan, annual flexibility, or lifetime freedom. Get Joan Premium today. www.gndenterprisesinc.com or call 877-698-9894 for more information.
From the island of Dominica, the Gramex International.
All right. OJ, that was wonderful to watch.
That
I
that
mean,
was that was good.
the biggest, arguably one of the biggest stages in the world, and we see, just following, last week, Sunday, this week, Super Bowl with Bad Bunny, and the way he's been able to use that stage to make a political statement, and to think that in 1979 Dominican band Gramax International performed there. Tell us about that, because you were prime minister at that time.
Yes, it's a one of the most what I call it wondrous stories that I can recall in terms of legacy. And sometimes you have, because we are human, we sometimes wonder where have the pundits be in their tracking the past in its form that it should take by way of information to the incoming generation. And what transpired was we were invited to the Miami Conference of the Caribbean following Hurricane David. I was accompanied by Julian Johnson, a then permanent secretary or cabinet secretary. And so there was Andrew Young there at that conference, and there were people like Sally Shelton from the embassy, ambassador in Barbados, and others. And I made a profound presence in the statements that I made following David. And it was one that was accepted with rapture and delight by the audience. I believe the way I presented myself was acknowledged as one of the best speeches that had been at that particular forum. And for those of the historians who want to look back, they will check the Miami Conference of the Caribbean of 1979. There is a business forum and political forum. Andrew Young then was the ambassador to the UN, and of course, as you will remember, he is also a colleague of King. So we, after this event, Ambassador Young and others called me up and said, "Well, what can they do to help to promote this island, Dominica, which is unknown?" Remember, we were just a few months into independence, so we hadn't yet been on the world stage. And I believe it was one of the chairpersons of the event, the Dade County establishment that promoted the Miami, the
Super Bowl.
particular function,
Mhm.
that was felt that it a good thing if we could have had some representation of a music um, um, company or organization or part or band or whatever that would represent Dominica then, and it would be a big stage to bring the name of Dominica into the world sphere. It's a good place to be. And so I suggested Gramax, and the rest is history. So you just played them there now, and that's how it became a live situation that Dominica's band appeared at the Miami
Super Bowl.
program
Mhm,
for that
mhm.
particular Super Bowl that year. And of course, Jeff performed, they performed with the exuberance. And I understand when I spoke to Gordon Henderson, he believes it had an effect to do with the carnival that began in Miami as well and started the acceptance of that genre of music in North America.
Cadas Lipso.
That's absolutely correct.
Right. So, I mean, if we have to start to list your accomplishments and contributions, you need a whole wall, to
Yeah,
list
well,
it.
we can continue talking from time to time.
Yeah,
I
but I want to
enjoy talking to you. You're easy to flow with. So
I
it
want to
is
come to contemporary times. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but when we hear all of what was happening in Dominica, with Dominica having its airlines, that didn't go out of business because, as we say in Dominica, it Kool-Aid. It went out of business because you sold their shares to Air Martinique,
Martinique.
and
Yeah.
they were going. So that was successful. They had successful trade, bringing food out of Dominica in an organized way, having a contract with major supermarkets to supply them with food, major things that we seem not to be able to accomplish now in 2026. Where where did we lose our way? Where did we lose track? As NEP, one of the persons in the audience says, I hope he says, so most of our government post independence have not been too forward thinking. I hope he's saying that in regard to the contribution he's hearing that you made and seeing how little we've progressed, how little we've moved up to where we are. So OJ, I, I'm going to let you talk.
I like
You know,
to, I
uh-huh.
like to go back a little bit because you see, one of the problems we have at this point in time is that persons like there are many like me who, during that generation, did many things that could be of assistance towards the program of development. But there's something peculiar about the system of governance. That is, if you're too self-assured and if you want to become someone who is prepared to bring forth an idea on your own terms, it's considered to be unacceptable because you're supposed to be doing it through a management of your mind over what you want to do.
Mhm.
And so developmental projects that have been brought to the fore in the more recent times find some difficulty in being accepted as being one that you have the right to do on your own with the assistance of the systematic manner in which government assists local entrepreneurs. And also the idea of how do we develop our foreign policy agenda. You will remember that I was in government somewhere in the period of the 80s,
Mhm.
but up to 2000, and I'll read a letter for you. Up to 2000, I maintained a relationship with France. I was considered to be someone that they had liked working with during the period I was in government and when I was a minister of government. And after leaving government, I continued a relationship with the French government. And the reason for that was because Dominica is in the middle of Europe. And so France meant a lot to me. In fact, I got some assistance from them in various areas, particularly in the political period when I was in government and I was a leader for party. And then I kept that relationship. And in the year 2000, I'm going to read you a letter. That letter was to dear Prime Minister Rosie Douglas. Let me take this opportunity to again compliment you on your victory. My friends in France and Europe generally wish to work with you and Oliver in making a success of your administration and to increase your cooperation with France. I'm taking the liberty to call the names. Mr. Marcel Shasta and Jean-Louis Bracco, who through Oliver began a process of cooperation with the last administration for the purchase by EDF for Domlec. Now, EDF is Electricity de France.
Mhm.
And management by the world's largest water company, Vivandis, for Dawasco, or still was stillborn due to ignorance of the implication for the good of Dominica. So in other words, we tried bringing those two projects and it didn't happen. I returned last night to Dominica for a one-day visit to present you an invitation to France to begin the process for cooperation, but was unfortunately unable to meet you. I'm pleased to inform you that Dominica and Venezuela are both being considered to be the resident jurisdiction, listen carefully, for the Caribbean for the Order of St. Jane of Jerusalem, which is in the Vatican, details of which is clarified by the prospectus attached. The fund is a UN-sponsored facility and needs the active involvement of your UN ambassador. See attached UN letter in respect of Kosovo. Oliver is our trusted contact for Dominica, and we will be pleased to have him to continue acting as our intermediary with your government. And we will be also pleased if he can accompany you on the visit to France to discuss the Jerusalem Fund with my partners as well as other proposals. Please advise us on the date of your official visit to France so that discussion with the authority of the fund and Vivandis can be included in your official program. We look forward to your visit and to assist you in creating a better cooperation with France and Europe generally. Let me just say this. Rosie Douglas, at that time, having received that letter from me through Ronaldo Giunta, did in fact inform me that he had had intentions of appointing me as an ambassador to the US. We had, I believe, Crispin Gregor was the ambassador to the UN. I was also told of a certain gentleman, and I wouldn't release his name right now, but he knows who I'm talking about if he's listening, to become the first secretary at the embassy. That intention was also cooperated by the fact that the first trip out of Dominica after Rosie Douglas became prime minister was to visit the prefect of Martinique and the chief executive officers within that embassy in Martinique. And the person who paid for that trip, the people who got him to go to Martinique, was the company that I was involved with, which was a company that was extracting sand out of Layou. TP Godino. We had a plane, we paid the ticket, and we invited Rosie Douglas to Martinique to begin engaging in certain levels of cooperation with France through the offices of the prefect and the council regional and the council that's appropriate to that department of Dominica. Let me just say this. Rosie met with the officials, and the intention was that we'd have gone to France. I was to be appointed an ambassador, so he said. He died. And since then, I lost traction with the government of the day. Let me just say further that when we talk about international airport, we keep on having a period where we have it shortchanged. We start with international airport with, I believe, mention is made of Eugenia Charles, I believe, and some mention has been made of Edison James. But nobody talks about Patrick John. Nobody talks about O.J. Serafin having done the same. Let me just inform you and your listeners, they might shock them to listen to this. But the reality is that an international airport was proposed, a report was done, and is with the Ministry of Communications and Works, I believe it's still there, of somewhere about 77, 78, thereabout, there was a first report. But then using that report, I engaged with discussions with the president of France, and an international airport was offered to Dominica. But guess for where? Of all places, Grand Savannah. And I would like to also include a name here that for cross-referencing, that Babs Dyer, when he became minister following my departure from government, was also invited to Venezuela by the presidential plane, which I had enjoyed with my wife a few months before, for that very same contractual obligation to be established with Venezuela at a figures considerably less to what we're talking about today. Unfortunately, that program for the development of an airport at Grand Savannah was set aside by Eugenia Charles, and the reasons given, as far as I understand it, was the lands belonged to H.D. Shillingford, and the intention then was that if you were to start using there as an international airport, the price that would be paying would be considerably less than if you sold it by lots. So Eugenia entered into an arrangement, not wanting to give credit to my government, as it were, and then this arrangement for the international airport of Grand Savannah disappeared. But even before that, when Patrick John was the prime minister, we went to Barbados to meet with the British Development Division. So Bruce Greatbatch was the person in charge. And then Patrick went to that meeting with Leo Austin and with Vic Revere and myself, with the pure intention of seeking to get an international airport. We begged and pleaded with them for that purpose. But there was a moment in time when I had gone to that meeting before, and Sir Bruce Greatbatch had somebody called a financial secretary, financial controller, who had a meeting with me, and he expressed the fact to me that the meeting will not come to a success because the belief of the British is that St. Lucia, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Antigua are 100 miles apart, right? 100 miles to St. Lucia, 100 miles to Antigua, 50 miles to Guadeloupe, 50 miles to Martinique, and therefore another international airport sounds like an overkill to them. But if Sir Bruce could go into Dominica in the morning and then leave after lunch and be at his home for dinner, if there was an airport closer to Roseau, he'd be interested. Now, coming from my airline days, I know that's fundamentally important that people understand that history, because historians talk, they write, they say all kinds of things without knowing what they're talking about as it pertains to the intimate, matters that come into the government from the cabinet or from the ministry and all of that. They're talking from hearsay or what say, them say. But I'm talking right now about a fact that when this matter came up, the gentleman's name was David Craxton. That was his name for the historians who'd like to back check and do all of that. And he told me that if Sir Bruce could get an airport closer to Roseau, he would do so. My captain, who was a guy called C.K. Shillingford, everybody in St. Thomas know him, and I had meetings at some point when he pointed out to me that below Mont Daniel, going across to Mansac, there's a stretch there that could accommodate an airport. I produced that as bits of information to the people in the meeting prior to Patrick John having had to tell me that he does not want to discuss anything else but the international airport. But when I realized we're losing, I had the temerity to bring that up to the attention of Sir Bruce that there's a possibility of an airport there. Some engineering studies were done, and even then, there was a gentleman with an airline who was in Melville Hall, was a friend of a friend, and he in turn said that he could land at Canefield, the Canefield roadway. He said he could land there. And without my knowledge, whilst I was at my office in Roseau at the ministry, I found out that Patrick John and Vic Revere had actually been with this captain, this particular plane, and they landed at Canefield to demonstrate how good it could be done. And the rest of it is history. Canefield came into action as an airport that even now people don't talk about. But that was how we got Canefield Airport in the absence of not getting an international airport. Then later on, of course, there's Sidney Bennett Allen and others who were prepared to do an airport at Woodford Hill and so on. And then, of course, Edison James and his party was going to an airport for $700 million, and now we have this airport. So these are the whole contradictions of information or lack thereof that I thought that such an opportunity that you give me, I will release it for the first time to the publics of Dominica and others.
So what is your impression, if you're familiar with the project, of the current international airport project that's ongoing?
Prior to the death of Vincent Robinson, who is a surveyor on all of the various airports, I got the impression from him then that the one of the United Workers' Party would have been cheaper than the one existing today. Mm-hmm. And I must admit too that, again, I hate to sound like I'm trying to make myself some kind of hero, but the reality is that I was the minister responsible for forestry, lands, agriculture, fisheries, and so on, cooperatives. In 1977, I recall having a meeting with Chris Maxime. Christopher Maxime was a very interesting personality. He was very convinced about certain things. And he came to my office regularly, and he did say to me that the Department of Forestry had got a new life because we had then explored the possibility of doing a number of national parks in Dominica, one of which was the Northern Forest Reserve, where all these communication discussions are ongoing with people, contesting as to whether it's a good place because of the fact that it disturbed the balance of the of
The ecosystem there is delicate.
the
Yes.
ecosystem in that area.
Mhm.
And I remember one meeting, we had a lunch meeting one time, that's Christopher and myself. And he said to me, with the most humble way of expressing himself, which he had in his way of talking, he says, Mr. Serafin, I will say this to you, that no matter what you do in government, remember one thing, that forestry and the protection of the environment will be low down on the totem pole of memory and recollection of any form of legacy that you will expect. Because people don't vote for forests, but you will have done something to safeguard the forest by passing that law for the Northern Forest Reserve, by protecting the water tables and such places, the forestry and all of that, for the rivers and whatever it takes there.
Yep.
And consider yourself doing something meritorious, even if you not get a vote for it. And then now I'm listening today and I'm hearing the various people. So and I must admit that I have to give my hats out to the young people who have taken time off, whether it be Miss Brisbane or Theodore's daughter, or the young
Is
gentleman from
August?
Ogis,
There's August from
whose
Suriname.
mother was employed by me for most of the time that I was business in Floral Gardens, and who I knew as a little boy, child, and to hear him expressing himself and to see the young people without any fixed political agenda standing up for what they believe in reminds me very much of me as a young minister standing up to Patrick Jordan Company when I said that the 45 square miles will not be accepted by my ministry. And I got people within my ministry, the same Maxime and Colin Booley and others, and we had a fight and we said, no way will we let people come in with a foreign agenda to take over 45 square miles. And I remember saying that opening in cabinet and I took my stand on it. So we have to, as people, stand up for what we believe in. And listen, I'm too old now to bow to people's expectation of what I should say and I shouldn't say. At this point of my life, I'm free to speak because age is on my side.
And so, very interesting historical placement of the international airport, and to see where we have come in 2026 when there's so much technology we could apply. In my opinion, we could apply to have a much more kind solution, kind to our environment. And then you mentioned about the protest, not even so much of a protest, but the demand that our forest reserve be respected, because we see mining activities being taken out there in massive proportions. And when I say mining, I'm not saying that they're mining for any particular item, whether it's stones for the airport or whether it's some people say it's copper, whatever it is. Um, i- what Mr. Maximus said to you, I'm going to paraphrase it, is that the preservation of our water table or watershed, our rivers, our mountains is you cannot put a value on it to be able to justify going in there with that type of activity to say that you're going to get anything, because whatever you get is going to be short term, short lived, and then we're going to be left with dry riverbeds and mountains that are scarred. So the question though, OJ, is, as we look at what's happening right now in a Dominican context, in a regional context, in a world context, what are the prospects that Dominica has that it can pursue, that can provide hope for an aspiring people?
I'm very pleased that you raised this here. Having been in agriculture, having been in floriculture, having been the minister of government that had the most cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives in existence, if you check back the books on cooperative development, and hearing about lands being made available to young people and all of that, I reflect on the fact that the lands of Dominica are for Dominicans. I mean, real indigenous Dominicans. I'm talking about not technical Dominicans that come with their various agendas from outside, but those of us whose grandparents grew from here. We need a right to the lands. One of the main reasons why I became involved in the politics at a very young age, I became, I believe, treasurer of the party, of the Labour Party of the time. At, I believe, 24, I was about 24, 25 years old when I became an executive member of the Labour Party. And I was persuaded by E.O. LeBlanc, like many people, everybody seemed to know E.O. LeBlanc all of a sudden. But my father, who was a founder member of the Labour Party at the time, used to bring me to LeBlanc's house regularly at up in the hills at Montrose.
Mhm.
And one of the things that he did say, which stuck with me, and one of these principles and policies was the fact that lands of the country should belong to the people, and that if anybody were to purchase more than 1 acre of land outside of Dominica, they would have to come up with a master plan for its use.
Mhm.
So the aliens land holding license, if you look back in the history of that, came from that. I don't know if they have removed that aliens land holding license, but it
Well,
was there.
they've been disregarding it because I mean we see
I don't know what they're doing.
foreigners
If
killing each other over multiple
Well,
acres
there
of
we go. And for hundreds of acres of land,
yeah.
And so I'm thinking that if we were to give land to young people in the present context of giving land at a price that's reasonable and fair, it should go with it a caveat as to what you're going to do on that land. And it should come with it a master plan and a structure as to how to go about it and what should be done with it. I recall making a proposal to the aid bank for, it was some big to them at the time, for $1 million because I was at that time in concert with an organization out of Canada who rum distillery company in Canada, and they were interested in doing a floriculture project. And I purchased 31 acres of land just in the very same area in the Glogami area,
Mhm.
going to what's Erdis and Jameson, that region over there. I purchased 31 acres of land from a lady from Marigot for the purpose of doing that floriculture project. And the company from Canada suggested to me, and I'm not at liberty to call the name right now, they said that if I were to come in with the land and the contribution of a substantial nature that represents an interest in the development of the agricultural project, that they would be prepared to do this in keeping with the concept that they got out of Holland, that Dominica is perfect soil for the development of floriculture. It went to the aid bank and it stayed there for a period of time. And then shortly thereafter, one of the leaders of the particular joint venture suggested that time had run out of their interest and we lost that opportunity. So again, floriculture stands out. Again, when we look at the opportunity to diversify in agriculture, we see a great need these days for coconut oil, for castor oil, for herbal teas, for the production of health products, even like what Blows used to do so many years ago.
Mhm.
There is a story that has to be attached to that because for everything I say, there's a story to link to it. Dr. Sebi, who is today probably even more popular now in his death after years, did come to Dominica, was engaged by my government to become part of a process of change of using the medical herbs for the purpose of attracting health tourism. When
Wow.
Eugenia
Dr.
came in,
Sebi.
they full more. Dr. Sebi,
Wow.
when he
Wow.
left Honduras, he came to Dominica and he stayed
Wow.
in Dominica. And many of the present persons who are involved with who are doctors of herbs, as we call them, were trained by Sebi, here in Dominica. And then the powers that be felt, well, okay, he's competing too much with the professional doctors and so on, and pressure was built up and he was sent out of the country. But years later, we have found out that Sebi was in fact an answer for Dominica. So I'm saying all of that to say that what we need really is visionary ideas. And there are lots of Dominicans with visionary ideas. And we should give them wind in their sails, let them float. and go with the ideas that they have. Not restrict them, not stop them, not block them, not demand from them, but let them fly.
There are two industries that I think would do well. There's three, but we run out of time, so I'll talk about two because we talk in agriculture mostly. Oje, why do you think that Dominica has not been able to successfully have a water bottling, water export industry? Because it would seem like a no brain. It would seem like a no
Well, let me
brainer.
just answer. Sorry, we run out of time, so let me just answer you quickly.
Hmm.
There was a letter I read to you a while ago that was written by Ronald Giunta, who represented some very constructive, very persuasive people in the government of France. And when they came, they had a contract for the management of water with a joint venture. It was called Vivandis, and that was a project that was given to the government of the day, which was rejected. Not long after that, I had an organization. I had an organization out of Utah called the Compassionate Service Network. In fact, Compassionate Service Church was registered in Dominica. It's in the registry of Dominica. And from there came from very impressive investors who wanted to do a project for the establishment of a joint venture for water for $50 million component and an MOU with Mr. Shillingford, who was at that time general manager, together with another project for the expansion of the port from the Roseau Port Radius. And I heard certain people, the gentleman from Depex, I heard him, what's his name? Whatever his name
Emil,
is.
Emil
Emil
Diputa.
was making a point about it recently, about the expansion of the port and so that you could take larger vessels and so on. That was, in fact, put together as a proposal to the government. And I'm talking about in 2000, and I believe it was 2006 or 2007, thereabout. That proposal was made available to the government. A memorandum of understanding was supposed to be signed to that effect, and for reasons which I can't explain at this point and at this time, this project did not go through, and it would have been a joint venture for the export of water. So I had two opportunities: one with Vivandis of France, and two from Compassionate Service for the exportation of water. What I would suggest, though, is that there must be a joint process of sharing information between the powers that be and all our Dominican people who have an interest, that we make sure that our water, which is our gold, which is our oil, should not be sold at no time to any foreign company or group of international persons who are seeking to take advantage of their finances to explore our water. Our water is our gold, and we should stand fast by this. And so here we are, an opportunity for the expansion of water, an expansion of the port. We see an opportunity. When my group was interested in doing that expansion of the port, the Compassionate Service Group that presented that MOU to the government of the day, what they were thinking of was it would have been the expansion of the port in front of the Pottersville St. Alphonsus Church along that way, and we would have been able to use it as a major port of transfer, like major
Transshipment. Yeah.
transshipment to take place for Guadeloupe, Martinique, Antigua, and St. Lucia. We're right in the middle.
Yeah.
That didn't go through. Still an opportunity, and I would suggest that governments or people who are interested in Dominica should come up with a proposal to that effect. And of course, the rest is history.
You know, it's interesting that you that you mentioned those items because I have intimate knowledge of projects like that because my first project when I came back to Dominica as an engineer was as project manager. We built the Cabrit's cruise ship berth with a
Mhm.
water line from Picard to that
Mhm.
cruise ship berth so that they could sell water to the cruise ship. And
Right.
then in Focole, the trestle, the where you drive from the ground out to the boat, that trestle, We
Mhm.
doubled the width of that because it was narrow, so we doubled the width so that the trucks could go back and forth without having to wait, so you could offload this. And we lengthened the port just slightly, took it from warehouse more towards public works, and the place where they store containers in the back of the shed, we
Mhm.
backfilled the sea in that area and created
Mhm.
a container park. So I was project manager on that project. We did that
Very
in
good.
1990. I worked for a company out of Nova Scotia who were the consultants on that project. You must have met a gentleman by the name of John Jay. I don't know, but he had
Yeah,
projects
yeah, we
all,
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
So John Jay company he had. So now the reason I'm saying that is that I know that Dominica has a unique advantage when it comes to that because we did all that work without having to dredge a single rock out of the ocean. Dominica, our waters are naturally deep. And so that project is cheaper to do in Dominica than anywhere else. Anywhere else you try to do a project of that magnitude, you spend millions of dollars dredging and creating the depth, and then you have to protect it. At Dominica, we have naturally deep waters that can accommodate the largest cargo vessels. That vision is a well placed vision, which Dominica has a relative advantage, and we hope.
But we must make sure that whatever happens in the development of that belongs to us,
Yes,
for our generations to come. And that is the danger here, that we may get these smart talking individuals arriving from God knows where with no money in their pocket and come to take advantage of us here. And so that is what we have to ensure, that we protect against the interests of our people, the next generation. Because, when Leblanc left, we were protected where we had the Beach Ordnance Act, where people know that wherever they build their fancy hotels, that the beach still is open to every
belong to the
Dominican,
people, right?
you know? And the same was said about this aliens land holding license and so on. And so I'm suggesting that what people must be more vigilant about, instead of just maypoeizing persons who are making a contribution or making a statement. If you don't agree, that's fine. There's no problem with that. But you should not allow your country to be sold out so that the next generation or two will find that they only have persons without grandfathers being the owners of our country.
Our assets. That what you say there is so key. That famous phrase, "Pas quitter your point Dominique Hodnou." We have to be careful that it's not somebody from the outside necessarily that's coming to take it. It is that we put our trust in our own people who are willing to give it away for some short term personal benefit. We have to be vigilant about both of those scenarios. OJ, and as Glenda Lavidou, she says, I could listen to OJ forever. But all good things must come to an end. Also, we want to be able to leave what we've spoken about with enough room for people to receive it and to ruminate on it. And so we have to leave the rest of the discussion for next time. This is extremely interesting. Um, we have to these interviews are being recorded and captured, and we will have to use social media to chop them up and to distribute them so that people who have short attention span can listen to us at 15 minutes at a time. But we're definitely going to have you on again and soon. But having said that, I'm going to give you the opportunity to close on and to talk about things that you something or the other that we I didn't get a chance to ask you, but that could tie all of this conversation that we had together. Your contributions as a young man, a very enthusiastic, prolific entrepreneur. Your contribution as prime minister and as a politician sounds just too general, but somebody who guided policy and the passing of and participated in passing of laws, as well as your time as a statesman trying your best to contribute and to guide and to still go out there and forage for opportunities for the country. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to package all of that together nicely before we close off tonight.
Well, I'll say this though, that it would be amiss of me if I do not bring in the God factor, the spirit of the Most High, the energy that comes from knowing that Jesus Christ is in our lives, that we have floundered, we have played with the joy of living day to day by music and dance. We have forgotten the principle of respecting each other's point of view, and that even as we speak tonight, there'll be those who would like to question many things that I may have said. And for this, I forgive you because you know not what you do, so to speak. The Father taught us to say that and to believe it. And I'm saying that unless we return to the God factor in our lives, I've seen miracles. I've seen situations where when the worst situation comes forth and it appears to be one that requires a superhuman effort to establish a moment to reflect and to enjoy that there is a God above. I have been to hospitals on one or two occasions for various situations that look very dire, but then the God factor comes in. There's always someone who you could call upon to seek and get your joy and your peace from. And my suggestion would be, in spite of it all, Dominica remains a gem of the Caribbean, that what we need to is reinvent ourselves. Relationships that we have developed in the past have a purpose for the present, that we should have confidence in ourselves as individuals who come from a creator, that we are creating from within that which has been put into our mind and into our consciousness, and that we should not allow ourselves to be having to be determining our process of growth and development, or by the way to explore certain ideas that we have through the eyes of any man living at this point in time, that leadership comes from within, and that the tolerance of those who do not want us to do what our God given talents, allow should not be accepted, that we should forge on and be the person that God has made us to be, and to remain vigilant, that we remain conscious all the time, that we have a mission, and that which we share will multiply, that which we withhold will diminish. And God gave us a God given talent, and let that talent be given back to Him, in exploring the opportunities to teach others that God is there. Rely on Him, and all shall be well.
Great way to live it. OJ, thank you so much. I mean, you came, you came prepared. You came with your knowledge. You came with documents. As you said, you know, not everybody going to agree. Some people have their own stories, but you did present what you presented in a very powerful manner. And anybody who wants to challenge it will have to come just as powerful and credible, and that is a very high bar that they would have to cross. The only thing I can add to what you've said is that I hope that we go back to a time where we can find people who are offering themselves up for leadership, who will demonstrate more clearly that they have the best interests of the people and the country first and foremost, and that the the fact that you were elected to leadership in itself is a privilege that offers you certain opportunities and certain experiences, but that seemed not to be enough many times. And so, as you said, we have to be careful that when we put our support behind people who offer themselves for leadership, that we are ourselves convinced that that person can demonstrate that his or her interest is for Dominica and Dominicans. And when that stop happening, maybe we give that person a break and let somebody else. And when that somebody else runs out of that mode, we do it again. But we have to, our principle should be simple as people, as especially island people, should be that our country, our fellow Dominicans, should be put ahead of any one person's special interest, any one religion, any one party. And I'm saying that both on the incumbent government and the parties who are waiting in opposition or fighting opposition to form government. We have to make sure that the leaders that we throw our support behind are of that type. And there's something that I want to say, especially for people for on the opposition side. There is something that smacked me in the face a few years ago, and it's very simple. It says that if someone is treating you unfavorable when they are not in power, imagine how they will treat you when they are in power. And so we have to be cognizant of that as well, and not just vote blindly because of a color, because of a personality. We have to make sure that we are putting Dominica and Dominicans first. So, OJ, I thank you so much. And of course, you have an invitation to come back very soon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Host. You did a good job of it as usual. Looking
Thank
forward
you.
to talking to you some other time. At
I,
least you allow me to speak my mind, and that's good enough.
I appreciate that so much coming from someone who's as experienced and knowledgeable as yourself. So thank you so much. I feel, if I was fair skinned, you'd see me blushing. But I appreciate that compliment because I strive to do this well and to continually improve. So thank you for that. All right. Good night. So listeners, there we have it. Um, a wonderful program where, if for nothing else, we've captured so much history from OJ Seraphin. History that, because we're not really a culture where we formally and in a very deliberate way keep records. And also our newspapers, our news outlets, our news media is not as structured as it should be. So programs like this week in interview is doing a wonderful job, I think, of capturing that, and I'm very happy. I say all the time that one of the absolute privileges of being the host of this week in interview is that I get the opportunity to speak and interact with people that I normally in my everyday life would not have the opportunity to do so. And so I'm grateful for that happening. And I hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So my thanks to my guest, Mr. Oliver Seraphin. Thank you to the team that helps me to put those programs together. As I said, folks, you're enjoying Carnival. Please be safe. Um, I know of at least one accident that happened on Friday. There are folks that I know, um, they lost a very vibrant young lady in the peak of her life from an accident involving a motorcycle. So my condolences go out to the family. I understand there were other accidents as well. So my condolences to you. Please be careful out there. We know we have a culture. Is it a culture? But we have a habit of going out and consuming alcohol and driving. Um, our road conditions are not the best. I was in Dominica in February. There are still so many areas where the edge of the road is still broken off. Um, We have faster vehicles. The engineering on the road is not the best because we don't have the banking that should have around corners. We have debris on the roads. We have, we know Dominica is a lot of corners. The roads are narrow. We don't have. So just be careful. And for the powers that be, at least demonstrate that you care. I mean, how difficult is it to enforce something as simple as protective gear, helmet, if you're riding a bike? If you see somebody riding a bike and they don't have a helmet, you pull them over, you you find them, you confiscate the bike, whatever it is that you have to do. You don't have to do it many times before the message starts to go around that you have to wear a helmet if you are on a motorcycle. Very, very basic stuff. Some areas we can put a speed bump. Under the cliff is begging for a speed bump to slow things down a little bit so that we can save some lives. Who are the people in authority who refuse to address those items, those factors of safety that have practically no cost? Do you really not care? I'm not even going to go into gun violence and all of that. I'm just simply going into things that are so easy to implement. Wear a helmet. If you're not wearing a helmet, we're going to pull you over and we're going to take the bike from you, and you have to come and claim it the next day or whatever it is. You put it in a pong or something, easy, low hanging fruit. It's not right that we have family grieving on the loss of their loved ones for things that are so preventable. um, Technology is there. We can have cameras that capture speed. We can just change the culture of driving in Dominica. That will save lives, and our people's lives are invaluable. There's no value you can put on it. So even if it costs a $10,000 or $20,000, do that. Because if you're not doing those simple things, how can we even believe that you have any intention of having a state of the art trauma center? So what when somebody gets in an accident and they come to the emergency room, we have the ability to treat them successfully. So for those of you who know people that know people that know people that can do something, please plead with them. And let's just start somewhere. Let's start where there's no cost, where it's just habits, and let us show that we really care about our people that you come to every 3 to 4 5 years to vote for you so that you can continue to maintain the lifestyle that you have gotten so accustomed to. Give them back a little bit of caring in return. So, folks, there you have it, another episode of This Week in Interview. And if you go into the Calypso show and the Queen show, enjoy it. And let's next week, we're hoping to put together a show that will talk about Carnival. We are switching the sustainable agriculture. We put it to the following week, and Wednesday we're going to talk about Carnival, Calypso, Queen show, whatever it is, Tewe Vaval, any whatever that moves you. That's what we'll talk about next week. So good night, everyone.